Hey everybody, welcome back to Kash's Corner, and if you can believe it, this is the Season 2 finale. Jan, we have shot 20 plus episodes of Kash's Corner. I'm excited to get into the Danchenko stuff today, but we'll be back after Thanksgiving with Season 3 of Kash's Corner. But before we do, we have one more episode, all things Russiagate, Durham, and Mr. Danchenko.
Well, it really is kind of crazy that we're 20 plus episodes into this. I mean, how does that happen? And wow, you know, the Igor Danchenko indictment, it's, I think, one of the biggest things that's happened in a very, very long time in terms of new information. I mean, okay, why don't you break down the indictment for, well, let's just start there. There's a cajillion questions I have for you here.
No, so let's really quick 60-second recap. We do the Russiagate investigation under Chairman Nunes. I was the lead investigator. We put out the Nunes memo, the House Intelligence Report, where we find all the FISA abuse, all the fraud, all the misapplication of law by the FBI and the DOJ to get a warrant. That's validated by the Inspector General's report. The Inspector General goes on to do 2 separate reports and finds over 100 abuses in FISA applications in the last 1 or 2 years. That's a big problem. So we're addressing those issues. Then comes John Durham, special counsel, appointed in the Trump administration to investigate, basically, the investigators, as Devin used to say. And he now has 3 indictments. First indictment, FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith is now convicted felon for lying to the FISA court. He literally took a document, John Durham indicted him for it, took an email and doctored the contents of the email to mean the opposite of what it said. So now you have proven FBI agent abusing the FISA court and breaking the law. 2, Michael Sussman was indicted about 1 to 2 months ago. Who's Sussman? As you know, we did a whole show on him. He is the DNC Hillary campaign lawyer whose law firm was paid tens of millions of dollars. They hired Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele. That led us to the dossier. Why is Sussman important? He's been indicted for lying to the FBI about who his client was. His client being the DNC and the Hillary campaign. So that case is ongoing. So now you have the FBI, their unlawful actions. You have Michael Sussman, the DNC, who represents the Hillary Clinton campaign, and their unlawful actions and their distribution of false information to the media. Now we get to Igor Danchenko. Who is he and why does anyone care? Long story short, Christopher Steele, as everyone now knows, whose credibility has been completely destroyed by actual facts, had to get his information or so-called made-up information from somewhere. Christopher Steele's main source for the Steele Dossier is Igor Danchenko, or at least that's what Christopher Steele told the world. And,
you know, Durham gives us an incredible amount of new information in here. I mean, we learn, potentially, and I want to get your perspective on this, you know, we have Sergei Milyan being, you know, apparently exonerated. We have the appearance of someone who I, frankly, knew nothing about. I was almost like trying to figure out what did I miss here? A guy named Dolan.
Yeah.
You know,
what did you miss? What did I miss? I'm the lead Russia guy, and I had never heard of this guy. I mean, to me, it's tragic in how comical it is because we, under Chairman Nunes, when we were running Russiagate, we sent letters and subpoenas, congressional subpoenas used properly, to the FBI and DOJ for all documentation relating to Christopher Steele's dossier, the underlying reporting, and all the connections that he and the FBI had through the whole Russiagate scandal. Charles Dolan never came up once. Me, nor not one member of my team, nor any of the Republicans on House Intel had ever heard of Charles Dolan until John Durham's indictment. Why is that so stark? Why is that such a surprise? It means to me the FBI and DOJ under Rod Rosenstein withheld information that was critical to the Russiagate investigation that we were running in 2017, 2018. And who knows what else they've left out, they omitted from providing us. And we knew they weren't giving us everything. But Charles Dolan, and we can talk about why he's so important, is an example that gives me more faith in John Durham because he's getting that information that was hidden and kept from us in Congress.
Well, and just why don't you flesh out exactly why you're so sure that there's something that the FBI knew that's being explicitly hidden from you as opposed to missed, for example?
Sure. Yeah. We'll get into the Danchenko indictment, but in the pages of the indictment, it's clear the FBI interviewed not just Steele, but also interviewed Danchenko not once, twice, thrice, 4 times, 5 times. They did not admit that to us when we were investigating the Russiagate investigation. I think we had at most 2 or 3 instances of an interview, and we never got the full contents anyway. Now there's 5. Where did that come from? Charles Dolan. Who is Charles Dolan? Why is he important? Charles Dolan, a career Democrat, longtime Clinton ally, worked on Bill Clinton's presidential campaign, worked on Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, and has given tens of thousands of dollars to only Democratic candidates for national office. He is affiliated with Danchenko and Steele. How does that happen? Fiona Hill, if you remember Fiona Hill, and we'll talk about her later, introduces the 3 of them. And then why is it important? Who cares who Charlie Dolan is, right? Well, John Durham's indictment tells us why he is such a critical figure in all this, because Charlie Dolan, Danchenko indictment, is the one that was feeding information to Danchenko for the Steele dossier. And here we have, on full display for the world to see, Danchenko is shown to have not provided any credible information to Christopher Steele for his dossier. So if the reporting that Steele got was not credible, and Danchenko's main sources saying on the record now, I didn't give you any credible information, why are you citing me as a source in your investigation? What did Christopher Steele rely on to support his recent interview with George Stephanopoulos saying he still believes in his work? He can't. His credibility has been shattered. And you asked me a couple of weeks ago, why did they do that interview? They did that interview because they knew the Danchenko indictment was coming. And we said it back then.
Fascinating. No, and just a little bit about Fiona Hill. Of course, you know, she kind of came into the public eye in the impeachment hearings. Now, so she clearly knew both Dolan and Danchenko, but not necessarily introduced the 2. Or how does that, like, this is an interesting question.
So Fiona Hill, a think tanker who ended up in the Trump White House on the National Security Council covering European affairs. And she was the one who conjured up the Ukraine fiasco that led to the impeachment of President Trump. So her and Vindman, Alexander Vindman, was the other one who said Trump had this phone call where there was this quid pro quo. Well, now we know, since the contents of that actual call were released and the transcript released, America can read for themselves, that's not what happened. And we wasted months of our time impeaching a U.S. president when that should never have been done. That was started by Fiona Hill in large part. And why is she important? Igor Danchenko used to be Fiona Hill's research assistant. He used to work for her here in America before she went to the White House. Fiona Hill introduces Danchenko to Christopher Steele. You know, just let that sit for a second. The guy who wrote the Steele dossier and was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it, Christopher Steele, by the DNC and Hillary campaign, was introduced to a subsource by Fiona Hill, the very lady who went into the Trump White House and then conjured up the Ukraine impeachment fiasco. And that's why people should be asking questions about her. Not only did she know Danchenko, but Fiona Hill also knew Charlie Dolan from their days together previously at the State Department. So how is it possible that Fiona Hill introduces Steele to a subsource for purposes of Russiagate, is friends with Charlie Dolan, introduces Charlie Dolan to Danchenko? What did she testify? Fiona Hill testified to the world during the Ukraine impeachment trial of President Trump?
So here's the exact quote. She says, I have no knowledge whatsoever of how he developed that Steele, of how he developed that dossier. None. I just want to state that.
That's literally unbelievable. Fiona Hill introduces Christopher Steele to Danchenko, his main source, the guy that used to work for her, and Mr. Dolan, introduced to Danchenko by Fiona Hill. And she has no idea. She testified under oath. She has no idea what Steele was doing or how that dossier got made. I think if I were John Durham, I'd have already placed her in a grand jury and questioned her under oath again, because she testified there under oath to Congress, and she may have a problem about lying to Congress.
Let's go back for a moment. Let's actually break down the indictment from the top.
Yeah, sorry, I got so excited. This is, years of my life coming around full circle that I skipped over what we're actually supposed to be talking about, the contents of the dossier. The indictment. Okay, so the indictment basically says that Danchenko, the defendant in this case, lied to the FBI on 5 separate occasions. And that's a crime. so long as the FBI has it properly documented, which I believe they do, otherwise John Durham would never have brought it. And another component of lying to the FBI, it has to be material to something, material to your investigation. So what John Durham is alleging, and we can go through the counts, but he's basically saying on multiple occasions, Igor Danchenko was interviewed by the FBI about the Russiagate investigation, the Steele Dossier, his involvement with folks like Sergei Milyan, and what John Durham is saying on multiple occasions, he lied.